Gardner Minshew is going to be the starting quarterback this 2024 season. Myself, Telesco, and Luke Getzey discussed it this morning. A lot of things went into it. It wasn't based off of last night. There's a lot of factors. So we feel like Gardner gives us the best opportunity to get off to a fast start, and that's what we're going with. We support him. Our team's behind it, our staff's behind it, our organization's behind it.
Good morning, Antonio. Not in terms of necessarily all the specifics, but what would you say outweighed in favor of Gardner over Aiden?
Yeah, experience, the operation, the processing, just everything we saw in practice. Some of it showed up in the games. A lot of stuff we can get better at. I don't think anything here is a finished product, but based off of where we want to go in the first quarter of the season, we feel like Gardner gives us the best opportunity. They both took it on the chin like a champ, and I told them just both be ready. We saw in the National Football League, you never know. But Aiden is a young player that has a tremendous upside that I think will still be a starter here in this league. Excuse me, I think will be a starter at some point in this league, if it's this year or next year, but he will play in games. And I think, Gardner's done a good job of kind of like, being that older presence because he's played, a couple years in the league and he's been through some adversity. So that's been good for Aiden.
Antonio, could you please discuss Tommy Eichenberg and him and going forward?
Yeah, he's dealing with a lower leg injury. Hope to have him back here. He won't play in the preseason game, but hopefully they have him back by the regular season.
The decision has been made and the implications are colossal. Gardner has been named the starting quarterback, and this choice is not just about a single game, it's a statement of direction for the entire organization. Experience, processing, and practice performance outweighed all else. The team believes Gardner gives them the best chance to burst out of the gates in the first quarter of the season, and they're betting the house on it. This isn't just a casual decision, folks, it's a calculated gamble with the entire season on the line. Yet this leaves Aiden in the shadows waiting for his moment, but make no mistake, he is the future, a young talent with untapped potential that will soon rise to prominence. How long will Gardner hold on to that starting spot? With every mistake, the pressure will mount, and fans will be calling for the young gun to take over. The NFL is unpredictable, and with a looming injury to a key player like Tommy Eichenberg, the stakes are even higher. Every decision counts, every play matters. One wrong move could change the entire trajectory of the season.
National Football League, Gardner Minshew has won the battle for the Raiders' starting quarterback position. Get excited. Coach Antonio Pierce made the announcement following Saturday's loss to the Cowboys in Week 2 of the preseason. Minshew was in a competition with Aiden O'Connell, and both had their struggles against Dallas. Minshew was just 10 of 21 for 95 yards. O'Connell was 14 of 20 for 96 yards and a score, but he also threw a 69-yard pick six in the fourth quarter. The Raiders finish the preseason versus the 49ers. They play at the Chargers in Week 1 on CBS. Let's bring in NFL analyst Ryan Wilson for more on this. Ryan, your reaction here, because O'Connell played well with the Raiders last year, played 10 games with them, went 5-5. Gardner Minshew, of course, was with the Colts. You surprised that it was Minshew that got the nod over O'Connell in this situation?
A little bit, Jeremy, but again, it feels like the lesser of two evils. We're not talking about any of these quarterbacks, potential Pro Bowlers anytime soon, or headed to the Hall of Fame. And part of me, and this is what I'm going to keep talking about until we see how the season unfolds, part of me wonders if the Raiders are going to regret not trading up from 13 to go get one of these quarterbacks, the 6 quarterbacks that went in the first round. That's water under the bridge, so you have to play with the guys currently in the roster, and that obviously includes Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. And you talked about the stats in the first 2 preseason games. They were average to slightly above average. O'Connell outplayed Gardner yesterday, but you mentioned the pick 6, which doesn't look good against starters or backups. So, again, and, I keep coming back to Davante Adams, who got traded out of Green Bay, got to play with Derek Carr, and then they took Derek Carr and sent him to New Orleans, and Davante Adams was visibly frustrated throughout last season. I don't know if that's going to change, and I keep coming back to that because you're playing in the same division as Justin Herbert when he's healthy. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes. The Denver Broncos went out and drafted a quarterback in Bo Nix, who will likely be the starter Week 1 as well. So they have to figure this thing out offensively. I think one of the other issues, Jeremy, is Luke Getzey is the new offensive coordinator. He came from Chicago, where Bears fans were annually frustrated with how he dialed up plays for his offense there. You have to hope the defense and Matt Crosby can do a lot of the heavy lifting. And you know as well as I do, hope is not a plan, but I understand going with Gardner because he's slightly more in terms of a veteran presence that he provides. But to your point, Aiden O'Connell did pretty well under trying circumstances a year ago, too.
We talk about the preseason not necessarily meaning a lot, but based on what we saw last night, there seemed to be some weight to it. How much do you think what we saw last night played into Pierce's decision?
If I had to put a percentage on it, I would probably say 35% preseason and then 65% based on the body of work throughout their careers. And, you know, we shouldn't sleep on the fact that last year Gardner Minshew came into a tough situation in Indianapolis after Anthony Richardson went down early in the season, and he played pretty well, and that team probably won more games than a lot of folks expected. Some of that has to do with Shane Steichen, the first-year head coach, and he had a lot to do with the offense. So I'm sure that weighed as well when Antonio Pierce had to make that decision. And we've seen Gardner Minshew make various stops throughout the NFL and play 3, 4, 5, 6 games in a season and hold his own. He's not a long-term starter, and I'm sure that the Raiders understand that, but their hands were tied. They weren't going to move up. Their new GM, Tom Telesco, has a history of staying put on draft day, so they were going to sit there, and they took a great player in Brock Bowers, who's going to need to have a big season too, by the way, and they decided to roll with these quarterbacks. So you can't convince me that Gardner Minshew will be the 17-game starter, even if he's healthy throughout.
This is a massive development in the NFL. Gardner Minshew has officially claimed the Raiders' starting quarterback position. Let's not sugarcoat this. The battle was fierce, but the decision speaks volumes about where the Raiders stand. Aiden O'Connell, who showed glimpses of potential last year, wasn't enough to dethrone the journeyman Minshew, despite O'Connell's better completion rate in the preseason. But let's be real, this isn't a victory parade for Las Vegas. These are two quarterbacks who are far from elite, and the looming question is, did the Raiders miss the boat by not trading up for a first-round QB? This franchise has been stuck in mediocrity, and with the likes of Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert dominating the division, Minshew might just be a temporary fix for a long-term problem. Raiders fans, brace yourselves. This decision could define the season for better or worse.
All right, now to the NFL, where QB1 status has been wrapped up in the Vegas desert. Antonio Pierce announcing today that Gardner Minshew will be the Raiders starting quarterback, beating out Aiden O'Connell for the top spot on the depth chart. He's on his 4th NFL team now, signed a 2-year deal with Vegas back in March, and a deal that included $15 million guaranteed. So, Antonio, what sold you?
Experience, the operation, the processing, just everything we saw in practice. Some of it showed up in the games. A lot of stuff we can get better at. I don't think anything here is a finished product, but based off of where we want to go in the first quarter of the season, we feel like Gardner gives us the best opportunity.
All right, now bring in ESPN NFL analyst Tim Hasselbeck, and all due respect to the quarterback room there in Las Vegas, I know the Raiders probably thought they'd have maybe 1 or 2 other guys in that mix to try to be the starter, but as it stands right now, it is Gardner Minshew. So with that said, Tim, what does he bring to this Raiders offense?
Yeah. Well, Michael, I think you're exactly right. There's no way the Raiders thought that they were going to go into the draft and not leave with a quarterback. But that's what happened, and it left them with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell as their choices to be their starter. Okay, and I think the decision, Antonio Pierce just said it, the decision is the experience. He's got nearly 40 starts in the National Football League. And then I think in terms of the decision-making and processing, look, he's a good passer. His limitations really are physical, not necessarily, mental. And so I think in terms of the beginning of the season, who gives the Raiders their best chance to win early on, I think that it's Gardner Minshew. That's what Antonio Pierce is saying. But I also think what he's saying there when he's talking about neither guy being a finished product, I think he's also saying this isn't set in stone for the entire season, and I think it'll probably play out that way.
All right, let's go across the coast, though. Now, in Pittsburgh,
The desert heat just got a lot hotter. Antonio Pierce has made it official. Gardner Minshew will be the Raiders' starting quarterback. But let's not kid ourselves. This isn't the headline Vegas was hoping for. Minshew, now on his 4th NFL team, edged out Aiden O'Connell for the top spot. Why? Experience, says Pierce. But let's be clear, experience doesn't always equal success. Minshew's limitations, primarily physical, are well known, and his nearly 40 starts in the NFL haven't exactly lit the league on fire. The reality is this QB1 status is far from permanent. Antonio Pierce knows it, Tim Hasselbeck knows it, and Raiders fans are feeling it. This move is about survival in the short term, not thriving in the long haul. The Raiders find themselves in a tough spot in a division where second best is never good enough. Minshew might bring a steady hand for now, but make no mistake, this storyline is far from over, and Vegas could be looking at a revolving door under center before the season ends.